As part of a new segment to the show called the Compass Literature Corner, we will be talking to local authors and writers who have had an impact on this region or whom this region has had an impact on. This week's guest is not only a founder of the Delta Equine Center, but also a parish pastor who writes about the importance of faith. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say today's guest is Spicer resident and author Doug Nick. Doug, welcome.
Thank you.
So Doug, why don't you tell me a little bit about your book, Horses in Heaven?
Sure. Well, it's a story about two individuals who happen to meet as they are en route to Seattle. They more or less capture each other's eye, if you will, and end up spending 4 days together, sharing a motel room, spending the 4 days together. At the end of that 4 days, they agree that they want to return the following year for the same 4 days in the month of June and leave it at that. The story moves on that they do return, and then for the next 40 years, they continue to return for 4 days back to that same hotel.
And each couple chapters is another year in their life when they meet up again.
Correct.
We should let the audience know that you're not following 30 years in a life.
Right.
You're following 4 days out of a year.
Correct.
Every couple years.
Yep, exactly.
You know. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write a book like that,
Sure.
where it's not necessarily the whole story, but
Yep.
a whole story in a couple chapters.
Sure. Well, it started as I was doing a book signing, and it was a bit slow, and I was people watching, and I was crafting stories for these people that I was watching walk back and forth and mingle with each other. And it occurred to me, and that's what happens in the very beginning for the female character. That's how they meet. And then I began to play with the whole notion, what would it be like for two people to meet, to spend time together, and then find out about their stories, specifically their life, just in those 4 days. So the 4 days was very intentional, became a challenge for me to figure out how can I help the reader understand who these two individuals are in just 4 days.
How difficult was that? What kind of writing styles did you try to incorporate to make it a little easier for yourself?
Yeah, great question. What really helped is that I framed each section of the year when they came back together by historical event or using another book that would give a glimpse to what that chapter was going to be about, and then it would unfold, their lives would unfold from that previous year based on whatever that historical event or book was.
Well, and a lot of the books were books that came out that year.
Exactly. So a lot of research put in to make sure that everything was
chronological and
yes.
everything. Yep. And it gives you a choice to pick up maybe another book after you're
hopefully.
done with this one, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what kind of eyebrows were raised when you wrote a romance with two couples that are married to different people.
Yeah. I don't think that was really ever an issue, at least not for me. For me, it was to engage the reader to have to struggle with that, because I wanted to see what that would mean, because both these individuals, as the reader finds out, really struggle in their marriages for a variety of things. And so what ethical issues arise from that? And what is really interesting is that there are several times throughout the book where they have the opportunity to say, let's figure out what it would look like if we were to leave our spouses, or a spouse is no longer with living, and what would that look like? And they both agreed not to let that happen. I think it's fair to say that they become emotionally committed to each other as the book moves through those 40 years. And yet, there's something that does not allow them to move to the next level of coming together. Because early on, they make the agreement that they will have absolutely no contact with each other the rest of the year. And of course, it was easy in 1975 because you didn't have, internet, the cell phones, and all those types of things. So that was easier than it might be today. But once they set those boundaries, their relationship really had boundaries like a marriage. It was just a different context.
And it was just kind of different, maybe kind of marriage, a marriage of spirit more
Correct.
than a marriage to each other.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit, as we're talking about the marriage of spirit, how you showed the expression of love that changes as you get older. You know, it's not always just about instant gratification when you're together anymore.
Right. You know, and there was an intentionality in the first meeting to be somewhat flirtatious, lustful. I mean, I really struggle. And in fact, I teach in a charter school in Willmar. And I shared this book that I was writing with my students because I think it's important for us to be models to students. And I told them that I want you to be able to read this book, so I have to be able to write it, you know, so it's not offensive to you, but that it engages you. And so that, I want it to start out in a very flirtatious way, but then to show how their relationship of spirit and just the physicalness of their relationship really changed. And it deepened. And what was important in 1975 is no longer as important in 1990 or 20 or in 2014 or something like that. It was about how for 4 days they connected and how they used that time with each other because they knew it was just 4 days. Mm-hmm. And so they had to take advantage of every moment.
They had to make it last
Yeah.
for the rest of the year.
And the rest of the year, yeah.
You know,
Right.
So speaking of making it last, you know, it's a matter of faith when any type of relationship, friendship or otherwise,
Yep.
lasts more than just a couple years.
Right.
So why don't you tell us about the aspect of faith in this book?
Yeah. Again, I wanted the reader to struggle with that word of faith and to recognize that it's something about more than simply limiting it to a religious context. On the back of the book, I say that it's really about faith in self and faith in the other. There is this notion of them struggling with their spirituality, with their religion, but it's really about them coming to understand who they are individually and then who they are as a couple, and how faith plays a role within that.
Well, and as the title says, Horses in Heaven, it kind of gives you an idea that maybe it's not necessarily just about horses.
Correct.
And it's not just about faith. It's
Correct.
kind of, tell us a little bit about the title.
Well, horses are everything for me. They're my passion. And there's a phrase in the book, which is a pretty common phrase among horse people, that if there aren't any horses in heaven, I ain't going. It's not grammatically correct, but that's the way it's stated. And there's a scene in there where there's a death. And so he shares that with her, and that's it. All at once, there is the title.
Wonderful. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We can find your book on Amazon, and where else can we find it?
It's at the Borders bookstore in the Candy Mall in Willmar, Minnesota, and then people can contact me and I can send copies out as well.
Perfect. Pick up your copy of Horses in Heaven. That's it for us in the Compass Literature Corner. Please tune in next week for more people, places, and issues facing our viewing area. I'm Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser, and may your compass always point you in the direction of a good book.
Major support for Compass is provided by the ongoing support of the Leo P. Flynn Estate of Millbank, South Dakota. Additional support is provided by the Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, promoting Southwest Minnesota as a place rich with opportunity. Come for the jobs, stay for the lifestyle. More information at swmnpic.org.